Have you ever looked at a major world event and just scratched your head? You see a world leader make a decision that seems to actively harm their own country, and you think, why on earth would they do that? Well, today we're going to unpack a framework that helps explain exactly that kind of confusing behavior. And think about it. This pattern shows up all the time. A major power pulls out of a global climate deal. A nation launches a war that everyone knows will be economically devastating. A superpower spends decades and incredible resources in a country only to abruptly pull out. From the outside, looking at what's best for the nation, these decisions are just baffling. They seem to trade away long-term security for what exactly? And that is the big question, isn't it? What is going on in their heads? What's the hidden logic that leads to these outcomes that seem so completely self-defeating on the world stage? To even begin to answer that, we have to first talk about a really common but pretty flawed assumption that almost all of us make when we talk about global politics. You hear it all the time, right? China did this, or America wants that. We talk about entire countries like they're single people with one brain and one set of goals. Now, this is a useful mental shortcut for sure. It's a rhetorical device called metonymy. But the thing is, it's also dangerously simple. In the world of international relations, this idea has an official name, the unitary state model. It's this core assumption that a country will, by and large, act rationally to protect its economy, its security, and its influence over the long haul. But what if that whole way of looking at the problem is where we're going wrong? And this quote from Robert Putnam absolutely hits the nail on the head. You just can't separate what happens inside a country, its internal politics, its elections, all the power struggles, from how that country acts on the outside. They are completely, totally intertwined. So let's just put these two ideas side by side. The neat, clean, unitary state model has one simple goal: make the country better off. It's playing the long game. But the real state? Oh, it's way messier. The leader is juggling so many different things. Sure, national welfare is in there, but so is winning the next election, keeping key supporters happy, and sometimes just their own personal gain. That is a very different calculation. And that tension, that huge divide between the ideal model and the messy reality, is where our key concept for today lives. This is the idea that's going to help us make sense of all those puzzling decisions we started with. It's called the geopolitical gap. And really, it's just the distance between what's best for the country in the long run and what's best for the leader right now. It's in that gap where decisions that look totally irrational for the nation can suddenly look incredibly rational for the person who's actually in charge. You can even think about it like a simple formula. A leader's total motivation, what economists call their utility, is a combination of two things. It's a certain amount of caring about the national interest, plus a certain amount of caring about their own private or political interests. And how much weight they put on each of those, well, that changes everything. So how does this gap get bigger or smaller? Well, the math is pretty clear. The gap gets wider the more a leader cares about their own private interests. And it gets really wide when what's good for them is very, very different from what's good for the country. When those two things happen at once, you've got a recipe for one of those head-scratcher decisions. Okay, so that's what the gap is. Now, let's talk about how it actually works in the real world. A great way to think about it is that every leader is playing a game on two different levels at the exact same time. This image really captures the leader's dilemma perfectly. This is what's called the two-level game. At level 1, the leader is sitting at the international table, negotiating with other world leaders. But here's the catch. Any deal they make there has to be brought back to the table at level 2, which is their own country. And at that table, they need to get it approved by voters, by their party, or by powerful elites. A deal can look fantastic on the world stage, but be an absolute political disaster back home. Let's make this super concrete. Look at this example. A leader has two choices. Option 1, negotiation. It's really good for the country, we'll give that a score of 4, but maybe it makes the leader look weak, so for them personally, it's only a 2. Option 2, conflict. It's terrible for the country, a score of 1, but it rallies everyone around the flag and makes the leader look super strong, so for them, it's a 5. Now, if you're that leader, which path looks more appealing? And this quote just sums it up so well. What's a top priority for the country's policy might not be a top priority for the leader's politics. Often, political survival comes first, and the national interest has to take a back seat. There's this brilliant analogy from the economist Mancure Olson that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine two types of bandits. The roving bandit plans to just raid a village and move on. They have zero incentive to leave anything behind, so they take everything. Their interests in the villages are totally opposed, a huge geopolitical gap. But the stationary bandit, they plan to rule that village for a long, long time. So they have an incentive to protect it, to help the economy grow, because a richer village means more for them to tax later. Their interests start to align with the villages, and the gap gets much, much narrower.
So this is all fascinating stuff, but why does it really matter to us? Well, because this isn't just some abstract academic theory. It is a powerful, practical lens you can use to make sense of the news you see every single day.
So what can you do with this? Three big things. First, you can understand why a perfectly good international deal might suddenly fall apart. It's probably because the political math just didn't work for one of the leaders back home. Second, you can start to see the logic behind so-called irrational actions because you're not just looking at national interest anymore. And third, you can actually use the size of the gap as a kind of warning signal for political risk and instability around the world. Honestly, this framework is like a decoder ring for the headlines. The next time you see a leader make a really puzzling decision, don't just ask, is this good for their country? Ask yourself, is this good for them? And you'll probably get a much clearer picture of what's really driving things. So, if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be the number two. Because every single leader on the planet is always, always playing two games at once. The international game and the all-important game they have to win at home. And all of this leaves us with one final and kind of provocative question to think about. If the goals of a leader and the long-term goals of their nation can be so different, who is foreign policy actually for?